Everything in commerce is fictional, including that legal name you always thought was you. A legal person is legally defined an individual, a company, a group of persons, or some other entity. So this of course means that an individual is an entity, a thing that is obviously non-living. Why? Because there's no such thing as a living entity. Entities are intangible things that have no life in them. A living man may control an entity in business transactions provided the legal name of that entity has been legally and properly registered by that man. You should begin to see what is going on and how the law only applies to non-living entities, which in turn means those same laws cannot possibly apply to you as the living man controlling that business entity. It is also obvious why there will be blowback from those people who are earning a healthy income and feel threatened by what I am showing them. I am not the threat though, I am simply showing people the truth, and that is what frightens them. If this does not open your eyes, then perhaps nothing will. The legal definition of person encompasses the fictional nature of all law and government because it can only deal with persons that are non-living entities, i.e. artificial persons, natural men and women, fictitious persons and the like. This is the holy grail of law and commerce, folks. In the business world of the courts, the court only have jurisdiction over your person, not over the living man, which of course is you. I am devoting a lot more time to this part of the puzzle because within these definitions I have shown you above lies the ultimate illusion. Herein lies the key to what we are doing to ourselves without knowing it, and how we are doing this out of ignorance. Ignorance is different than stupidity though, and I will explain that this way. Ignorance is a state of being uninformed and unaware. It can also mean that a person is lazy to notice something, or is doing so deliberately. As for stupidity, it is knowing what is right and trying to find it in the wrong. Stupidity is not the lack of knowledge, but the illusion of having it. An attorney at law is stupid, not ignorant. Everything in law has been created by attorneys and bankers/central banks and world banks to form organizations called governments. This is a fictional realm that includes all written laws governing commerce and trade. It's referred to as the UCC, and it is a humongous trap that was created as a means to lure unsuspecting men and women into the lair of evil. But people are getting suckered into volunteering without realizing it, and this is something that I did until I realized that I was screwing myself and decided to stop partaking in the self-inflicted pain and suffering I was causing by my acts. Yes, I was my own worst enemy at one time. Now I have no enemies at all. I stopped fighting. Who wants to fight anyway? Especially if you are losing those fights most of the time? You are just trying to survive whilst I am really living. You may not see this yet, but you may eventually, if you don't give up learning. Attorneys have created all the rules that make up the rule of law, but they have hidden in plain sight the most important rule of all. When I say everything in commerce is fiction, I really mean everything. Because all of those written laws regulating commerce are fictional, fake, make-believe. Nothing within that commercial world can be real, and I mean nothing, including you. I have made an astounding discovery that I am now sharing with you and everyone else that cares to know what I do. I not seen any other man living as I do, nor have I read anything similar to this paper I have authored. I did not learn this from the internet, sorry Mr. Gore, but the internet makes registering a snap and also assists in people discovering for themselves what I am showing you now. I have uploaded, and updated, this paper to my scribed account page for people to view and download for free. I want people to discover this on their own with just a little assistance being necessary. I am showing you the door, you must walk through it. So here is how I put this all together. I discovered that I have been doing everything wrong, but so is everyone else, so I was in good company and most certainly not alone. Since I first wrote about this almost 2 years ago, I have learned many more things that have further served to confirm I am correct about what I am about to explain in detail to you now. I now control the legal business entity that operates in that fictional realm for me in commerce, and this allows me to transact business in this state for a profit legally for the first time in my life. 50+ years of living a lie is long enough in my humble opinion, and it was obvious to me when I found it what I had been doing wrong all along. It explained why my ass was handed to me so many times before in court, and then provided me with the ability to turn the tables around 180 degrees. You see, there is a law on the books that they never told us about, and I found it hidden in plain sight, right under our collective noses. That law clearly states that in order to transact business legally, everyone must use a legal name that has been registered properly with the Secretary of State to create a legal business entity that can then be used to legally operate in that fictional realm. This is something we all must do, with the specific exception of attorneys, judges, clerks, officers of the court, and high-ranking bank officials, officers of the banks, which makes complete sense because they are the entities that have all the privileges and they makes all the rules. If we don't follow those rules though, there is no exceptions and we suffer the penalty of failing to do so. Filing that legal name that appears on the certificate of live birth by using the assumed name certificate is 100% legal and makes absolute sense in what seems to most people as a world gone totally mad. It explains why we have been at a disadvantage and allows us to connect all the dots which were missing before. No one can force anyone else to do anything, everything is voluntary, and that of course includes transacting business in this state. But if you choose to participate in that game of commerce, you had better educate yourself first and know what you are doing. This is mandatory for all business entities, including corporations, but my business is not a corporation and requires no license to operate legally. It does require that the legal name be filed to create that legal entity though, and everyone has no clue what they are doing to themselves. To claim that you are a legal name is a lie because a legal name is a non-living entity. There is no incentive for any government employee to inform us of this requirement, and very few of them know what I am telling you anyway. This legal requirement is universal and every state has their own version of the DBA, which depending on the size and population of the state, may be handled by the county clerk's office, which is a sub-entity of the Secretary of State's office. It is the only way the system can work properly for them, because when people discover that they are screwing up, they stop doing what they had been doing, and this puts a damper on the state's ability to collect tax revenue, eventually leading to a serious decline in earnings. Let's not fool anyone, the government is a for-profit business entity and it's big business now, so this is not something that we can expect its employees to accept easily, but the truth is, those employees have no choice. There is no immunity for any government employee, including judges. In California, the legislation that mandates legal compliance for all legal names transacting business in this state of a profit may be found in 17900, 17930 of the California Business and Professions Code. This is where the law refers to the legal requirement to file a fictitious business name statement with the county clerk's office, and this legislation has been modified dramatically in recent years because it was obvious that people were beginning to see that the problem was with the use of that legal name. The form for California is designed to prevent you from filing properly, and this of course is intentional. Alex Padilla's office is ripe for a huge lawsuit because it knows I have found fraud within that state-mandated form the county clerk claims everyone must use. The government agency that generally registers all legal business names in this state, which means in the United States, is the Secretary of State, SOS. The government created the legal name expressed on the Certificate of Live Birth, COLB, but failed to inform me that it represents an entity, not me. The legal document that I used to file that legal name and represents the founding business documents for my business entity is called an Assumed Name Certificate, ANC. I filed the ANC online with the Minnesota SOS, and I know by experience that this is the only way to properly register that legal name in the United States and be in compliance with the law. The other states' various DBA forms are traps luring in people and causing them to believe the purpose of this legal requirement is so that other people know who they are doing business with, but that is just a trick. The Minnesota ANC is an official government document certified by SOS Steve Simon and serves as validated evidence proving that my business entity is properly registered as required by law. The importance of compliance becomes self-evident if you end up in court because that is where it really matters, but I will explain that later. The Minnesota's SOS has the same official validation as any state SOS has in the United States and may be used with any legal name that originates from the COLB regardless of what state in which it has been created. It also does not matter if you were born in another country and wish to file in Minnesota because a legal name on any birth certificate is still a legal name. This is great news for people who wish to stay in the USA but have no legal papers to establish a legal presence. Naturalization is another trap. The Minnesota ANC is valid in each and every state to transact business in the United States for a profit without having to pay an income tax, while also offering solid proof it is 100% compliant with the rule of law. The legal name is actually a product created by the state referred to and by the certificate of live birth, COLB, but this is not a real name, which is why it's called a legal name. It is in fact the real name flipped around 180 degrees and then disguised as a first middle last, FML, name, a name which is definitely not you. This has created a lot of confusion as to what the difference is between a real name and a legal name. Here's a reported quote from Mark Zuckerberg: "There is some confusion about what our policy actually is," the CEO wrote during a Facebook Q&A. "Real name does not mean your legal name. Your real name is whatever you go by and what your friends call you. If your friends all call you by a nickname and you want to use that name on Facebook, you should be able to do that." So we can see now that Facebook is very much interested in you telling them what that legal name is, but Mark is simply muddying the waters by not really explaining the legal difference and why two names exist to begin with. The FML name is legally defined in CFR 100.12 Identification, 52 U.S.C. 30101, 13. Identification means, in the case of an individual, his or her full name, including first name, middle name or initial, if available, and last name, mailing address, occupation, and the name of his or her employer, and, in the case of any other person, the person's full name and address. Nowhere in that definition will you find the word surname. This means that a surname is not the name used for identification purposes, and that a FML name may only be used in that way to identify itself in a business transaction. The word surname was derived from the root word sur, which serves as a prefix meaning over or above and occurs primarily in words with French influence, i.e. surcharge, surname, surrender, survive. This root word is the prefix sur, which means over, above and more. This prefix does not indicate greatness or superiority. In number 2, it is a belt tied over a saddle. In number 14, it describes an article of clothing that goes over other clothes. Sur is not used as a suffix. Now you know the difference between a surname and a last name. They are obviously not the same. This is precisely why a USA passport, note that it is not called a U.S. passport, has the surname strategically placed above the given name, and this also explains why that document is not considered a legal form of identification. Passports are legally defined as traveling papers for men and women, and this is universally understood in law. Don't believe me? Call the passport office, which is located in Secretary of State John Kerry's office, Wash, D.C. The non-living legal name is only supposed to be used to name and identify the registered non-living legal business entity operating under that legal name, and cannot legally be the same name as the living man who uses it to conduct business in this state for a profit. Are you living or non-living? I don't know about you, but I am a living man and there is nothing non-living about me. One common denominator is that all of these documents are issued by the Secretary of State, which is also the office with the registry of all business entities. A certificate may only be issued to a non-living entity, not to in any way representing a living man or woman. What is the legal definition of certificate? Now it gets real interesting. Certificate, legal definition. A written document that is official verification that a condition or requirement has, or has not, been met. The COLB is a certificate, all right, but it is not proof that the legal name has been registered as the law requires if one plans to use that name to transact business in this state for a profit. That COLB is simply a copy of the birth record as shown in the birth registry, and that only records events, not names. That legal name is not registered until you file an ANC with the SOSUC, which is up to us to do. This is yet another trick used to keep you and everyone else totally mystified, including the government employees that work in that agency, as to the true purpose of that ANC and what that legal name represents in law. The realm of commerce is not real, and neither are any of those commercial laws, UCC, that are being thrown around on the internet. So now we also know that a passport is not used to identify you or anyone else, but rather, to show anyone that asks for your papers when traveling to other jurisdictions. The surname tells someone what family you came from, to indicate your inheritance, and the given name is the name you are known by or known as. Lawrence of Arabia was known as Lawrence from the region of Arabia, and I am also known as Douglas of Avalon, but these names do not identify the man, they identify what he is known as and where he is from, neither of which identify who he is. Only entities may be identified, which means that if you obtain an ID, you are claiming yourself to be a non-living entity. That's not good, of course, unless you are dead. By properly filing the ANC with the SOS, this provides my registered legal business entity a status of active/in good standing with the Minnesota SOS, which means that my business entity is legally registered and may defend itself in a court action as well as sue other entities to hold them accountable for any losses/damages to that business, financial or otherwise. In essence, the ANC is the game piece that I must use to allow me to legally conduct and transact business lawfully in the realm of commerce, while also evidencing and demonstrating that I am the living man that exists outside of that fictional realm that represents that entity, not myself. It also allows me to establish the fact that I do not own anything and that it is my business entity that owns and holds all private property held in that registered legal name. I am the registered name holder, not a registered owner. A registered owner is not considered a living man because a man cannot own anything, but a registered business entity in good standing with the state can and does own property and is therefore able to protect those assets from theft or damage by another party. A holder of property has total control and complete discretion with respect to the use of all property owned by and held in the name of that registered legal business entity. A bankruptcy trustee is an example of the court appointing a holder, as a trustee is a holder of any property until the true owner may be found. I reiterate the fact that I do not own anything, my business entity owns everything that would otherwise be assumed to be owned by me, and that would be a false presumption. This is how people get themselves in trouble with the court. They unknowingly lie to the court and everyone else and then wonder why the ruling is made against that person. You must screw up first, then all they must do is wait for you to commit the act. This status distinction becomes self-evident with the proper filing of the ANC and is extremely important for you to understand, because if I do not own anything, nothing can be taken from me. If a person/entity, like the IRS, wishes to take something owned by my business, they must first take this up with the courts and file a lawsuit against that person, which is the registered legal business entity, not me, that allegedly owes the IRS money/tax. Since my business is properly registered, it is legally capable of maintaining that legal name in any court action, meaning it may sue another party or defend itself should another party file a complaint/lawsuit against it. The IRS is alleging a personal income tax liability, but my business has no personal income whatsoever and neither do I. It's all business income, and since that business is a sole proprietorship, that pass-through entity has no tax liability. I am not the sole proprietor, however, the legal name is that sole proprietor. That legal name was filed properly with the SOS using the ANC, and that created the sole proprietorship, which bears the same name. The legal definition of that sole proprietorship entity is as follows. Sole proprietorship, a form of business in which one person owns all the assets of the business, in contrast to a partnership or a corporation. A person who does business for himself is engaged in the operation of a sole proprietorship. Anyone who does business without formally creating a business organization is a sole proprietor. Many small businesses operate as sole proprietorships. Professionals, consultants, and other service businesses that require minimum amounts of capital often operate this way. A sole proprietorship is not a separate legal entity, like a partnership or a corporation. No legal formalities are necessary to create a sole proprietorship, other than appropriate licensing to conduct business and registration of a business name if it differs from that of the sole proprietor. Because a sole proprietorship is not a separate legal entity, it is not itself a taxable entity. The sole proprietor must report income and expenses from the business on Schedule C of her or his personal federal income tax return. This means that all income that passes through that business is tax exempt, and since I am not the sole proprietor, I have no personal income and thus, no personal income tax liability. All the income is business income under the control of the account holder, which of course is me, and no tax filings are required whatsoever. I opened a business bank account with US Bank, and the tax identifier is the SSN, Social Security Number, that was assigned to that business entity by the SSA, allowing it to identify itself to government for tax purposes. That SSN has nothing to do with me, you see. It is the tax ID for my registered business, and this further distinguishes the entity as a business and not me. I encourage those who wish to comply with the law to open a business account right away and transfer any and all funds from personal accounts over as soon as possible. Personal accounts are in fact fraudulent because you are signing a contract stating that the legal business legal name is you, and that is not true. Within the commercial realm of the United States, only legal entities/legal fictions are allowed to operate in commerce legally, and those business entities must be registered entities that are active and in good standing with the SOS. So what is the penalty for not filing that legal name properly? It is not a fine or jail time, but there is a penalty that is far more reaching than either one of those things. The penalty for non-compliance with this mandated law to file is that the legal name/legal entity is unable to maintain that legal entity/legal name in any court action, which means there is no way to proceed in a case brought against that business or to sue any other party in a court until proof is established that it is in compliance. In other words, that business entity may not maintain that name in a court action, business tort, etc., and has no way of protecting and or otherwise defending itself or its assets from another party that has perhaps stolen or damaged private property owned by that business. You have unknowingly made yourself a sitting duck. That law is in place for very good reason, but there must be a way the government allows all of us to comply with that law for it to be considered good law. That law is intentionally hidden in plain sight where it was thought no one would discover it. My discovery proves that nothing is hidden forever, and the truth always exposes itself at some point in time and must be acknowledged. We must also realize that government employees have no obligation to tell us what we should be doing, that may be construed as legal advice, and attorneys have no incentive to tell us anything because then we would not need them for representation. I have already educated myself and complied with a law they may know nothing about, and it can easily get confusing to them, but I have no obligation to educate the court or any attorney either, and we all know that ignorance of the law is no excuse, correct? Why is this so important? Because, we have been misled, intentionally or not, into thinking and actually believing that we are an entity by using that legal name as if it were our own name. A belief is the absence of knowledge, which is the same as saying I did not know that, so I have no beliefs. I either know something or I don't. I have no beliefs and thus know that I am not that legal name and am able to prove it. An entity is a thing, an object, or a product that is non-living. It has no heartbeat and it is not breathing, ergo it is not living. I am a living man that has a heartbeat, can eat, breathe, walk and talk, therefore, I cannot possibly be an entity, as that would be quite impossible for anything to do. I am able to prove that I am not that legal name/legal entity. The kolb is that product the state creates/produces for us to use to transact business. Bingo. This is the function of the assumed name certificate. It was created for this purpose so that I, as a living, breathing man, may have the ability to comply with the law. I cannot function in a fictional realm because I am a man, but most people are attempting to do this without knowing what it is they are doing to themselves. This is the commission of a criminal act, and it is called false personation. Claiming to be something that you are not out of ignorance is silly and it is illegal. Now you know why you will probably lose in a court action every single time. Do you know who you are now? The more important question is, do you know what you are not? It does not help me to know this, I already know the answer. It only helps you to know the answers to these two questions and then be able to prove it in court. If you do not see what I see, it is because you see yourself as that legal entity. Your mind may not open up to seeing anything other than what you have been taught to believe, because most people have no clue what they are doing. Only if you know who you really are can you possibly know what and who you are not. The information I am sharing did not come from any book or from an internet website. It is the culmination of well over 20 years of study and immersing myself in something that most people want nothing to do with, written law. Anyone can tap into this source of knowledge I am showing you, but you must first be willing to accept something that flies in the face of what we were all taught in school and held as truth by most of our friends and family. I may not be able to teach you how to open your mind, but I can certainly show you the path to finding that doorway. It's up to you to walk through it. This material is actually very easy to understand once you are able to see that FML name is not you and what filing that ANC really does. Your ability to grasp the importance of what I have done is predicated on whether you want to know the truth. Not knowing this is not abnormal. In fact, unfortunately, it is the norm, and I am doing the best I can to make this easy to understand. Let's delve a little deeper into how this all transpired in the first place and how our minds have been controlled as a means to get us to voluntarily submit to being enslaved without knowing it. Do you have complete control of everything in your life? You can, but first you must let go of what you can't control, that is, everything that exists outside of reality and is in the commercial world that you have no control over. That fictional world of commerce you need to use to live but have no control over may only control you and your property when you have not filed the legal name properly. You did not create any of it, but it controls you because you are not aware of the most important rule. If it controls you, it controls your mind. Your mindset must be in the proper place, and you must open your mind to what the world of commerce really is. It is all an illusion, a fiction, a game. That Kolb, certificate of live birth, is a very big part of that fictional world of commerce and the game being played, but how can one prove that he or she is not a part of it? Stop partaking. Give back what is not yours, and then you will be able to get back what really is yours. That is, you stop functioning within the commercial world as a thing, knowing that fictional world of commerce that you think is not real at all. Give back that driver's license and cancel all other registrations you have filed, such as voter registration. People who register the legal name to vote are actually committing voter fraud, because remember that the legal name is an entity and entities can't vote. I have no problem with those who do register to vote or have a driver's license, though. It is none of my business. Written law requires that you register any name that you are using in commerce for a profit in this state by filing with the Secretary of State or a state agency that is charged with registering DBA names. For the state of Minnesota, Section 333 of the revised Minnesota statutes is where you will find this legislation. Stop and think for a second. Is that Kolb/legal name a name you are using in commerce? Yes, of course it is. Most people use that legal name every single day in commerce to transact business but don't realize it. You use it as if it were identifying you, the man or the woman. The problem is, it was never intended to identify you, the man. That legal name was created by the state to identify a legal entity transacting business in this state. More specifically, it identifies a business entity that operates in commerce lawfully for a man or woman for whom it was created. Filing the ANC accomplishes the task of registering that legal name, and the SSN that is assigned to that Kolb/legal name, oftentimes at birth these days, has a specific purpose as well, that is, to associate a 9-digit tax identifier, ID, to that specific registered legal business entity that has been filed with the SOS. This is important because there could easily be more people filing that same exact legal name, but there are never two identical SSNs associated with the same legal name. The ANC guidelines clearly point out that filing with the SOS does not copyright or trademark that name, it registers it so that it can be verified by anyone that wishes to evidence that name is indeed properly registered and has a status of active and in good standing. This is the same sort of status that a licensed corporation has when it has properly filed and registered with the SOS and provided it is following the rules of the game. There exists one major difference, that is, the ANC is not a license, it is merely a DBA, doing business as, and that is a significant difference. Why? Because any license is a license to break the law. If you have a driver's license, for example, all a law enforcement officer has to do is accuse you of breaking a law, and the burden of proof is on you to prove otherwise. Why? Because you are claiming to be a fictional entity, not a living man. How does one prove they are a man and not a fictional entity? The ANC does that, and that, my friend, is the sole purpose of that filing with the SOS. Now you do not need a license or permit to drive, or to build a home, or to buy a car, or to do anything else you desire. Your registered business entity operates in commerce for you, which proves that the Kolb legal name can't possibly be you. So this comes back to that first understanding of who we really are, and more importantly, who we are not. You are not that legal name on the Kolb, but you must be able to prove this to anyone that inquires, because there exists a presupposition that everyone is that person, entity, that is known as a legal name, and most people step right into the trap of going down to the county or to the SOS where that Kolb was created and pays to get a certified copy of the Kolb. Then they unknowingly hurt themselves by using that legal name /Kolb, which was voluntarily paid for, and go down to the DMV to obtain a driver's license. This requires that an image of that man or woman be digitally superimposed on a card called a driver's license right next to a first, middle, last name that is not their name. So a driver's license is nothing more than a fictional entity /thing created by the state at the request of an ignorant man or woman to use in commerce, but it is fraudulent, and you are breaking the law that requires that name be properly filed with the SOS. When you operate as a fictional character in their realm of commerce, thinking of course that the Kolb legal name is you, you are violating the law without even knowing it, and making yourself that game piece that is not really you, because it is in fact a non-living entity. This explains why having a driver's license is a death wish. All licenses are a license break the law. It also evidences that you have not filed that Kolb name with the SOS, as the law clearly requires, providing that judge with total judicial discretion to rule as he or she desires with no actual relevance to law. 17900 of the California Business and Professions Code states the following. 17900, b, as used in this chapter, fictitious business name means 1. In the case of an individual, a name that does not include the surname of the individual. Remember that old maxim, ignorance of the law is no excuse? That goes both ways, of course, and once a man has you comply with the law by filing the ANC with the SOS registering that legal name, you are now fully compliant and can prove that Kolb legal name is not you. The presupposition that you are that legal name /legal entity is immediately put to rest, and the tables turn 180 degrees in your favor. That legal name now works for you instead of against you. By the way, state employees are not told what I have just shown you to be the truth in this paper. If you are damaged in any way, your entity has standing in court, provided you are able to evidence that your legal name on that Kolb has been properly filed with the SOS and has a status of active and in good standing. Now you know why a judge has total discretion in deciding your case if you have not filed properly, because you are providing him or her with that discretion by failing to have any standing in their court. You can't defend your business entity or sue anyone else. Your registered business entity evidences that you as CEO have standing in any court, and therefore any and all discretion that judge may have assumed to have does not exist. You are now able to evidence that your legal name has standing, so you can defend yourself and, if need be, sue any corporation or person, including the United States, Inc., and win. Also, there is a form of restitution for people like us that are in compliance and have been damaged by poorly trained government employees. This form of restitution, known as unjust enrichment, shifts the burden of proof to the government/defendant to prove that it did not unjustly enrich itself. Only an entity may have standing in a court. A living man or woman won't be recognized in a court. Remember, the first thing any judge asks in court is to state your full name. Once you have identified yourself as that legal name, you have just stated that you are a dead man. You cooked your own goose. This is the voluntary nature of everything in commerce. It's all in that legal name and requires that you claim that entity is you. So then, it is this form of voluntary act that explains the voluntary nature of the personal income tax, and why anyone who claims they have personal, as opposed to business, Income may have a personal income tax. Why the government tells everyone the income tax is voluntary? Because until you properly file that legal name on the COLB with the proper authority known as the SOS, you have no way of proving that you are not that legal name. That presupposition exists and always will exist because your mother acted as an informant by telling the so-called government she produced a product. Why are you considered a product, and how can anyone tell an entity something and have it somehow respond that it understands? Look up live birth in state law and you will find the answer to that question. You see, ignorance of the law is absolutely no excuse, but if you know the law, you know the rules of their game and are therefore no longer ignorant. Anyone reading this for the first time is probably ignorant and may take this personally, but that is ignorant as well. The people that created government also created the fictional world of commerce, so they made the rules, and the rule of law is what governs entities, not men and women. If you know the rules as well as I do, your business entity operates in commerce for you, and you have therefore averted any and all problems associated with law enforcement. You have stopped volunteering to partake in that fictional world of commerce illegally and unlawfully. You are operating legally and lawfully through the use of that ANC and the business entity that you created as a means of complying with the law. Now you are 100% legal and compliant, while pretty much everyone else is not complying and have no clue they are breaking the law simply by claiming to be something that they are not. No wonder everything is upside down and so difficult to figure out, right? I simply figured out the rules and know them better than most people, therefore I win the legal game every single time I play. I can't lose. The best analogy I am able to provide is the popular game of Monopoly. The United States, Inc. created the game of commerce, and they are providing you with a game piece known as a COLB, the legal name. When you play the game like you do just about every single day and use that legal name in commerce, yes you do, pretty much everyone does, you are violating the golden rule. You know, the rule that states any name that is used in commerce must be filed with the SOS. BINGO. Do you see it now? Do you see how everyone is doing this to themselves by voluntarily stating that legal name is them? How can a man or woman be a legal entity? They can't, which is exactly why the government can do anything they wish to you until you comply with that golden rule. You give that judge total discretion to throw you in jail, fine you whatever he or she wishes, and you have no say in the matter. Even written laws don't matter because you have failed to understand that you are acting out of line by stating that you are a fictional entity, and of course, court is commerce. You are pointing a gun at your own head, then pulling the trigger. This is simply an analogy, but you get my drift that when we stop volunteering, we stop partaking in that game of commerce and are able to prove/evidence we are a living man, or woman. How? By presenting the evidence. What evidence? The properly filed ANC demonstrating you are in compliance with the law and your business entity is active and in good standing. Remember, no one is forcing you to admit that the legal name on that COLB is you submit to that voluntarily without realizing it. How do you know who you really are if that legal name is not you? I will first ask you, from where did you come? The answer is that you originate from your family, your mother and father conceive you. You were born into a family and the surname of that family identifies where you came from. You were conceived at some point in time and the family name is referred to outside of the legal realm as a surname, not a last name. Attorneys intentionally confuse this name conundrum by claiming the last name and surname mean the same thing when in fact one is living and breathing, the surname, while the other is non-living and considered to be dead, the last name. The last name is last while the surname is must be first and then followed by a comma. A first middle last name has no comma or punctuation marks, a major distinction between the two. Although they appear to be used interchangeably, the law clearly states the distinctions by legal definition. Now you know the family name aka surname is not your last name. Can anyone tell me why anyone would knowingly place their family last? That would be ridiculous to put your family last when family always comes first. The given name always follows the surname and comma, pause, because that is the name your mother and father gave to you and who you are known as. It does not identify you. Why? Because any name that identifies something cannot be a living, breathing man, it may only identify a non-living entity, i.e. a vehicle, tangible. A legal name identifies something intangible. An assumed business name certificate identifies this entity as legally transacting business in this state for a profit. Shakespeare wrote a script for a play called Romeo and Juliet that refers to the name July. O Romeo, Romeo! Wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father, and refuse thy name. Or, if thou wilt not, be but sworn my love. And I'll no longer be a Capulet. Rom. Aside. Shall I hear more, or shall I speak at this? July. 'Tis but thy name that is my enemy. Thou art thyself though, not a Montague. What's Montague? It is nor hand, nor foot, nor arm, nor face, nor any other part belonging to a man. Oh! Be some other name. What's in a name? That which we call a rose. By any other name would smell as sweet. Shakespeare was indeed a 33rd degree Mason, and this, my friends, is exactly what Freemasonry is all about. Creating an illusion and then putting the truth right under your nose that would expose that illusion to you. It's right under your nose but you do not see it. I am exposing the illusion and in the process, pulling back that curtain, demonstrating that the almighty ounce is just a man with a cape and a pointy hat. I have broken that curse spell and made myself free from the bondage of my own doing. That spell has been eternally broken now, all that is left is for you to act on it. Your actions are what define and identify you as a good man or a good woman. We all have God's will instilled within us, and God created us to be like Him, not to be Him. Our Creator wants us to be good, but for good to exist, so must the bad, evil, otherwise there would be no choice. Good cop, bad cop. Light and dark. Happiness and sadness. Freedom and bondage. Yin and yang. We are doing all of this to ourselves. All of the pain and suffering in the world shall end when we stop partaking in what is causing our own pain. Waking up and seeing the light is the beginning of that process. I am simply pointing you in the proper direction and showing you the door, that's all. The rest is up to you because you must walk through that door. I am not attempting to persuade or convince anyone that what I am telling you here is the truth. That is not possible because everyone must figure this out before it has to become knowledge, and at this stage, few if any people know this. A belief is the absence of knowledge. This is why I do not believe anything. I either know something or I don't. If you tell someone that you believe in God, what you are really telling them is that you do not know. Beliefs and entities only exist in fictional realms. A realm is something fictional, and this means that government, commerce, and religion are all fictional realms. Only non-living entities may legally exist in a fictional realm such as that which constitutes government. Government is an entity as well, and within which all statutes and codes exist. An entity is always a non-living thing. Reality TV in and of itself is an oxymoron because TV is a non-living thing that is just staged to appear as if it were real. A license is only issued to entities. What is a license? This is a good one for all of you that have driver's licenses and are somewhat pissed that people such as myself drive every day and do not have a driver's license or numbered plates on the vehicles I drive. I know that I do not want or need one, but you seem to think I do because you think you need one, and you may even claim you want one, but after reading this you may want to change your mind. Why? Well, this is why. The term license is taken from the root word for the term licentious. What does licentious mean? Here it is. Simple definition of licentious: sexually immoral or offensive. Wow. And the more complex full definition of that word licentious is 1. Lacking legal or moral restraints, especially disregarding sexual restraints, prostitution. 2. Marked by disregard for strict rules of correctness. Rule breaker. So what does all of this really mean, and why does it even matter? Well, contrary to what most people think, when one applies for and obtains a license, that license is required to break the law. That's right, if you do not have a license of any sort, you cannot possibly break any laws. What? That may not appear or seem correct to you, but it is correct and the law spells this out very clearly. Here is an example of this in the Motor Vehicle Code. California statutes and codes state that no person shall drive a motor vehicle. Yep, that is the law, which then goes back to that definition of person. If I have a driver's license, doesn't that provide me the right to drive/travel? Nope, it's not a right to drive, it's a privilege that can be taken away/suspended, and we know this happens all the time, right? That driver's license actually makes the act of driving a motor vehicle illegal, and that privilege may be taken away from the licensee for any reason, or for no reason whatsoever. All one must do is have that ID on their person, and that automatically makes that person a criminal because it cannot be you. What's in your wallet? If there's a driver's license in there, you are taking a huge risk and probably have no idea what I am talking about. Allow me to explain. You unwittingly gave the God-given right to travel/drive and live when you exchanged them all for government privileges. Yep, you did that without knowing what you were doing. We all did those, so don't feel bad. We unwittingly waived any and all God-given rights we may have thought we still had by stating and admitting that we are a legal name, and that legal name is once again, a non-living entity. Saying that you are a non-living entity is a big fat lie. This may seem rather confusing, and it is. This scheme and master plan was specifically designed to be confusing and complicated as a means to discourage someone like me from asking relevant questions. Employees cannot answer many of the questions I ask them, saying that what I am saying is unintelligible and therefore, unimportant. After all, everyone is doing it, so I must do it too, yes? No. This train of thought is foolish. Just because everyone is doing something does not make what it is they are doing legal and correct any more than someone acting the exact opposite of everyone else makes it wrong. I am doing the exact opposite of most of you. I do not have any license of any sort. A license is permission to do something wrong, ergo, you must have one in order to break the law. If you don't have a license, there is no way to do something that violates a law, which would normally result in the issuance of a fine, jail, or both when you are found guilty. So the license is what provides the evidence that it is your intent to break the law, because without one, breaking the law is impossible. Are you confused enough yet? Did you really intend to screw yourself? Probably not, but it certainly appears that way to a cop. He will say, tell it to the judge if you argue or claim innocence. If you have a license in your wallet, you have permission to be licentious, considered by definition to be lewd conduct marked by a strict disregard for the rules of correctness. Quite honestly, that license makes you look like a perverted whore. Wow, perhaps a license is not such a good idea then, you licentious slut. People that label themselves persons with a first middle last name unknowingly step into a huge pile of crap because they have no idea what they are doing. Remember that a license must be applied for to that agency known as the DMV. To apply is to beg, and then $$ exchanged in return for valuable consideration. This makes the registration of a vehicle with the DMV a business transaction in this state, and the profit is going to the state, not you. Haha, remember that nothing can be forced upon anyone, and that includes a license to drive or to do anything else. Government employees have no obligation to tell you this, but it is intentionally omitted from the instructions when you request a certificate of live birth. The employee at the county clerk or secretary of state's office does not know this either, because if anyone, such as me, knew, they would not be subject to those written laws. Your registered legal business entity could be cited or arrested and thrown in jail, but it's not you, so you will never go to jail. What a brilliant trick! We have been played and hoodwinked by the British accredited registered slime and the banking elite families. But please do not blame them, for it is us that have been our own worst enemy. You are self-destructive and don't know it. Brilliant! If one is doing something to harm themselves voluntarily and without thought, that will always be legal and is actually imperative for the scheme/plan to work properly. The DMV is a very compartmentalized agency in that the employees each have very specific tasks they must complete. Carrying out that specific task may put one at risk of personal liability. Why those sneaky little? Wait a minute, no pointing fingers at anyone else now, it's your fault because you were never forced to do anything. Remember, everything is voluntary. Well then, stop volunteering. Aha, now fear seems to be a problem because people are afraid to drive without a license and think if they take that public numbered plate off and replace that with a private property plate, their vehicle will be taken. That numbered plate tells that cop you are driving public property, which means you are given a privilege to drive it only if you pay the rental fee to use it. That is called a use tax, and people give that gift to the DMV every year for the privilege to drive that vehicle they think they own. A man or woman cannot own anything, they may possess it and control it, and that is all I am doing. Fear is manufactured with lies and misleading information fed to us via television and now, social media. Our minds are bombarded with bullshit every day. Fear is actually man-made. We are scaring the shit out of each other and then blaming one another for all the problems we are having. This may seem crazy, and it is. Stop the madness and start living. This paper is a lot longer than I initially wanted it to be, but then all those people out there illegally operating in the realm of commerce, transacting business with licenses, would never know how licentious they really are and now realize how easy it really is to correct this problem. Peace, love, and light to everyone that reads this, for you are now on the right spiritual path and know what you need to do. Authored by Herrick, Douglas Joseph. Chief Executive Officer, DBA Douglas Joseph Herrick. Business Entity ID number 824736000029. Minnesota Secretary of State, Steve Simon. Filed, April 30, 2015. DJHERrick@yahoo.com. Page 14 of 14.